Welcome to JK Tells a Story, where real-life dramas unfold. Sit back and enjoy today's tale. I spent a lot of time trying to relax. There were so many emotions bubbling inside me. Anger, regret, pain, jealousy, and sadness were just a few. But there was also love. I had loved Claire Brennan for most of my life. I'd loved her since I knew what love was. In middle school, we were best friends. In high school, we were boyfriend and girlfriend. In college, we were lovers. And when we graduated, we got married. I knew I wanted to marry Claire from the very first time we kissed. My mom and dad tried to get me to date other girls. They were concerned that Claire and I were too close at such a young age. I understood their point of view, but it didn't matter to me. I never felt like I had to hold back or give up anything to be with Claire. I suppose if I had, we would have just drifted apart. I chose the college I wanted to attend purely on academic criteria, and it just so happened to have the best opportunities for Claire as well. We had many unrelated friends and interests. We spent a lot of time apart, but the best times we spent together. She was my best friend and I married her. Claire was my complete opposite in many ways. She was outgoing. I was reserved. She was short, 5'5" on her best day. I was tall, 6'4" when my growth finally stopped. She was the emotional one. I was the calm one. She had a large family and I was an only child. She was an athlete, and while I was always trim and fit, my interests were more academic. She was a devout Catholic. I believed in God but was skeptical of organized religion. I was decent looking enough. She was very, very good looking. I wasn't a movie star and she wasn't a model, but we were a good match. I can't say exactly what caused our mutual attraction. I can only say that it was genuine. When we were kids, she would gently tease me, and I would pretend to know how a gentleman should behave. I would watch her play sports and she would come to my debates. I was always proud of her, no matter what she did, and her smile always let me know she felt the same way about me. We never made plans, but we always ended up together. I never made her choose me, and she never asked me to change a single character trait. But we always ended up putting each other first. And we could talk to each other about anything. About dreams, fears, desires. We always shared everything. That's why it was so shocking. That's why it hurt so much. I wasn't sure I believed in soulmates, but if I did, she would have been mine. We were caring and attentive. It was more than just physical attraction. When I asked her father for permission to marry his youngest daughter, he gave me a first-class interrogation. He questioned everything about our relationship. I admit I panicked at first. I was confused about my answers. But then I saw Claire through the window, watching our conversation on the porch. At that moment, I realized I had to answer honestly and decisively. If I wanted her hand, I would have to earn it. I explained to him that although she had touched my heart, I had chosen to love her. I had made that choice. I convinced him that I knew what that meant. Surely for the better, even for the worse. No matter what, whatever worse meant. 3 short years later, the worst came and I made my decision. I still loved her, and I still wanted her to be happy, even if I wasn't happy. That's why I sat alone, trying to keep my emotions in check. She knew me well enough to know what my reaction would be. I'm sure she took that into consideration. Even when in a state of emotional frenzy, she always knew how I would react. This case will be different. In the past, my predictability had been a source of strength for her. Now it will set her free. But how I would treat her depended solely on me. She came home late from work again. Unfortunately, this had become the norm in our house over the past 4 months. It was this and her change in behavior that gave me the first clue. The fact that she no longer smiled when she saw me hurt me far more than finding out the details. To see with your own eyes that the one person you love no longer loves you is devastating. She walked quietly into the dining room. I was immersed in my thoughts but still noticed her appearance. "Hi, Claire." "Hey, Ethan. Are you okay?" "No, not really. Please sit down for a minute so I can explain to you why." I rehearsed my speech and hoped I wouldn't have to deviate too much from the script. I wasn't sure I could make the right decision if I was forced to improvise, and I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to be brave and honorable in the face of the toughest challenge I'd ever faced, to let go of Claire. Claire, I love you with all my heart. I always have, and I'm sure I always will. I don't want to argue with you. I don't want to yell at you. I don't want to call you names or throw accusations at you. I want us to sit here and decide together what we need to do. Okay? Of course, Ethan. What are you talking about? Her eyes betrayed her attempt to hide her anxiety, however slight. Claire, more than anything in my life, I want you to be happy. I don't know why that thought has been uppermost in my mind since the very first time we kissed. And even though it pains me to say it, I know you're not happy with me. Unshed tears stood in her eyes. Strangely, I was comforted by the fact that by leaving me, she was at least a little upset. I'm really not interested in discussing all the details. I'm afraid that if I know too much, it'll hurt me and keep me from moving on. I don't want you to think I'm a coward, but if we could just agree that I know for a fact that you're not happy with me, I'd appreciate it. You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Claire? She barely audibly whispered back, Yes, Ethan, I know what you're talking about. Thank you, Claire. The fact that you don't deny it helps me believe I'm making the right choice. Claire, I want a divorce. Frank Brennan possessed an inner strength that I'd always admired. He and his wife Diane raised 4 sons and 4 daughters in a small 3-bedroom house in a not-so-great neighborhood. He was 5'9" and had a physique born on the streets and hardened by manual labor, with matching tattoos and scars. I'm sure he was one of the strongest men I've ever met. That too is impressive. But it was the loyalty and devotion with which he treated his wife and raised his family that earned my respect. So I felt I should explain my decision to him and give him a heads up. We were sitting on his back porch, chatting over a few beers, when he finally got me to tell my story. Son, are you going to tell me why you came here? Yeah, I'd like to, but it's harder than I thought. I hoped he would stay calm long enough for me to tell the whole story. Sir, I have loved no one but your daughter since I first saw her. I promised you on this very porch that I would always put her needs before my own. I have come here today to tell you that I believe that is exactly what I am doing, even though I am leaving Claire. What followed went about as I expected. He was angry with me, of course. There were a few heated words. He wanted an explanation I couldn't give. Sir, all I can say is that I love your daughter, and that some things will remain a secret between her and me, unless she sees fit to discuss them with you. It pains me to sit before you and admit that my marriage to your daughter has failed, but I believe it's for the best. I only ask that you respect that I have come to tell you this in private because I believe you deserve to hear it from me. After a while, he calmed down enough to let me give some details. When I left, he was embarrassed and upset but let me leave without further incident. Claire never cried. She was on the verge of tears for a few minutes, but they never came. She didn't argue with me or attack my manhood. I was glad for that, but I silently hoped she would beg me to stop and change my mind. But she never did. I felt calmer knowing that my decision to leave without a fight was the right one. The only time she flinched was when I mentioned my conversation with her father. I spoke to your father this afternoon. I explained to him what I'm about to explain to you. I just hope that, out of respect for our time together, we can part without a lengthy process. I don't want to deal with the possibility of financial ruin along with everything else. I plan to leave as soon as our divorce is finalized. I have prepared the paperwork. There are several options for dividing our limited assets. The most important one is your decision regarding our home. Please review them with whomever you wish and let me know by the end of next week. Okay, Ethan, I'll review them. I can already hear the questions. Why didn't I put surveillance on my wife and her lover using some super-secret ninja spy skills? First of all, I didn't have those skills. The last time I'd been in a fight was my sophomore year of high school. when a senior had unsuccessfully tried to get too friendly with Claire. I was furious when I found her crying in the school parking lot. It was pure luck that I didn't catch up with the guy on school grounds. I would have been expelled for sure. My dad grounded me for a month. I considered myself lucky when his parents decided not to press charges against me. Years later, I learned that I had Frank Brennan to thank for that. He convinced the boy's father that keeping the case quiet was the best choice for all involved. The second factor that influenced my decision was my own mental health. For weeks now, I had been a wreck. I was having trouble sleeping, and I was another mistake away from being fired at work. And most importantly, I had no one to turn to. My mother died of breast cancer during my last year of college, just before graduation. My father became addicted to the bottle to cope with his grief and was never the same again. 6 months after she died, he moved to Florida, and I didn't hear from him for almost 4 years. I needed a fresh start. I needed to get away from my hometown. To do that, I needed money. What little I had belonged to Claire, so I needed her to agree with my decision to divorce and start over. I was only 25 years old, and I had a plan. If luck turned my way, I could survive with my sanity intact. Revenge was the furthest thing from my mind. 2 weeks after my conversation with Claire, we were sitting in our attorney's office. Claire had decided to give up the house, and it was for sale. We would split the checking and savings accounts. My meager retirement account would be mine. She would keep our new car and the payments on it. I would keep my 10-year-old truck. And that's it. Signed, sealed, and delivered, except for the 90-day waiting period. The next thing I did was one action I regretted during the divorce. I lied to Claire. "Where are you going to live, Ethan?" "I've rented a small apartment near the office. I'm going to live there until I decide what to do next." "Good. Then I guess I'll see you when the house is sold, at the closing." "Unless." "Right. Absolutely. See you soon, Claire." Our attorney had my power of attorney for the closing. My truck was fueled and stocked with my clothes and laptop. My wedding ring lay on the kitchen table of what had once been our home, on top of my last message to Claire. The note read, "Goodbye. I will always love you. Be happy." On my way out of town, I stopped to say goodbye to Frank Brennan. He had meant so much more to me over the years than the average father-in-law. "Son, you and Claire should be together. Anyone can see that. You both don't want to talk about what happened. Can there be forgiveness? Do you remember your vows to God and your family? This is too much and too fast." "Yes, too fast, sir. I have found it in my heart to forgive. I love your daughter and want only the best for her. Now I need to find peace." Diane Brennan hugged me at the door, letting me know she understood more than she was saying. When she finally let me go, she put her hand on my cheek, closed her eyes, and stood silent for a while. When she opened them again, she spoke in a voice that only I could hear. "God bless you, son. I will miss you. I had to leave before I broke down. When your spouse is clearly unhappy with you, it's good to know the reason why." I had no idea. Little things popped up from time to time. Putting the toilet seat down, picking up socks, loading dishes into the washer. But in the last few months, we'd never once had an argument over nothing. I thought maybe she was stressed out at work. They were clearly working longer hours. I asked her about it. She said she had to work harder, but she would be fine. Then I did the one thing I knew would not get me into more trouble. I started doing more than I should around the house. I started cooking dinners more often and doing the dishes right afterward. I did laundry and folded towels and sheets. I dusted the furniture and washed the windows. I tried to do anything she might notice, anything that would melt her icy attitude toward me. After a few weeks, I broke down and took on my least favorite chore, cleaning the bathroom. If I hadn't done that, it probably would have been a while longer before I found out. I know I would have never thrown the trash out of the bathroom. I know I wouldn't have seen the box with the pregnancy test. This piqued my curiosity, and I started rummaging through the trash until I found a positive test. This led me to the medicine cabinet and its full dispensers of birth control pills. It led me to reflection and a horrible conclusion. We hadn't been intimate in at least 7 weeks, for almost 2 months. We made excuses that we weren't feeling well, too tired, too stressed. It was the longest we'd ever gone, but I hadn't thought about the possible consequences. I had to be wrong, but I knew I wasn't. Another man had gotten my wife pregnant. But who? The answer to that question didn't take long to find. I called Claire and prepared to ask the painful question. Her direct number was forwarded to the front desk. I asked to speak to Claire but was informed that Mrs. Mitchell had already left for the day. I decided not to leave a message. Her car was still parked in the parking lot when I pulled up to her office about 20 minutes later. My faint hope that she had been in an accident and someone was frantically trying to contact me crumbled. 30 minutes later, all my questions were answered. Her boss, Derek Patterson, stopped his car right next to Claire's car. She stepped out of the passenger door and walked over to him. I saw her smile, my smile, as they finished kissing openly, without a care in the world. My smile, freely given to another. That was all I needed to know. I was a few minutes ahead of her. I had no trouble hiding my feelings from her that night. She barely glanced in my direction. It took me a little over 2 hours to realize that my marriage was over and why. It was a 20-hour drive to Las Vegas. I made it in 4 days. The first day, I drove through Nebraska and Colorado. I took my time driving through the mountains of Colorado and Utah because I liked the peace and tranquility I found crossing the Great Divide, and because I wasn't sure my truck could handle the terrain. At first, I was worried about the engine, but by the end of the trip, I was more concerned about the brakes. At the end of the 4th day, I laid down on an uncomfortable mattress in a hotel off the strip. I slept for the next 18 hours. Checking in, buying books, and filling out housing applications didn't take long. Less than a week later, I was a 25-year-old newly divorced student with an adulterous ex-wife and no family. Now I was a first-year law student living in a one-room dorm with a shared kitchen and bathroom. I wish I could tell you about my new exploits and acquaintances after returning to college life, but nothing could be further from the truth. I had no experience with dating. It was always just Ethan and Claire. I had no idea where to even begin. I can tell you that during law school, I never had a single date. I didn't even have any close friends. If any woman even hinted that they were interested in me, I missed those signals. Instead, I used school as an escape and put all of my energy into my studies. I spent the next 4 years working toward my Juris Doctor and MBA. It wasn't such a crazy idea. I was studying for a 4.0 GPA. Claire and I discussed the possibility of going back to school once we had a stronger financial footing. When I decided I needed to move on with my life, the first thing I did was take the LSAT exam and fill out the applications. Why Las Vegas? They were the first to accept me with a full scholarship and grant package. I didn't know anything else about the school or the city, except that they had the program I wanted and they were far away from my hometown. About once a month, I would send Mr. and Mrs. Brennan a letter telling them about my studies and my life as a graduate student. This was a habit I picked up from my parents when I was a student. Maybe it was a matter of routine, or maybe I hoped that someone in the world cared about what I was doing. 13 weeks after the start of my first semester, I had a package waiting for me. I now knew the exact dollar amount my love and heart was worth. $764.18, after fees and expenses, of course. This was probably the 3rd most depressing day of my life. Periodically, every few weeks or so, I would get an email response from Frank or Diane Brennan. I never let them know where I really was, and they never asked. They would give updates about one of their other 7 children, but never about Claire. It allowed me to imagine that I had a family that missed me. I don't know if it was helpful or not, but it made me feel less alone. So I kept in touch with them. For the first 6 or 7 months, there were always some hints, but never anything explicit. Forgiveness, reconciliation, fatherhood, responsibility. They never talked about it explicitly, but always dropped a strategic, hopeful anecdote. And suddenly, the reminders and hints stopped. I never doubted that Claire would keep her baby, but I wondered if she would tell her parents the truth before the baby was born and could no longer be hidden. I also wondered if Derek Patterson would divorce his wife, abandon his 3 children, and do the honorable thing for Claire. I was left to wonder because I didn't have the courage to make inquiries. But I knew that the likelihood that a child born to a black man would look like me or inherit my light brown hair, fair complexion, or green eyes was slim. I felt a bit of a coward when I sent flowers, balloons, and a gift basket to the Patterson home to congratulate Mr. Patterson and Claire on the birth of their baby. I sent a duplicate copy of Claire's congratulations to her office, addressed to the president of the company. I promised myself that I wouldn't stoop to intentionally trying to hurt anyone, even Derek Patterson. But the pain was still too much. I needed to do something about it. I didn't spread any malicious rumors. I just offered my congratulations. In fact, I was genuinely happy for Claire. She always talked about her love for children. We talked about having a big family, many children and hopefully grandchildren. She was working toward her dream, and I was happy for her. But I didn't lose sight of the fact that her happiness came at the expense of my pain. And without knowing what really happened after receiving my gifts, I could envision a disastrous outcome for Derek Patterson, however unlikely it really was. Thankfully, this simple, cowardly act allowed me to legitimately close that chapter of my life. I was still hurting, really hurting, but it was over, and nothing could be changed. It didn't help my social life. I didn't have one and wouldn't have one for a few, many years. I met my first real friend after my divorce at work, and he was 20 years older than me. The small law firm I took a job at specialized in real estate transactions. The starting salary was above my expectations but not prohibitive. I was good with contracts, always good with numbers, and later found out I was good with people. Ethan, people need to be able to look you in the eye and know that you can solve their problems. They hand you the keys to their dreams and trust that you won't screw up. You have a gift, and I'm going to show you how to use it. Walter Harrison was the senior partner assigned to review my work. He actually did more than that. He became my mentor and life coach. Harrison was a living legend in the legal community. He negotiated multimillion-dollar real estate deals and was a top-notch negotiator. He was loved and, more importantly, respected by state and local politicians, the business community, and the gaming industry. Everything he was involved with ended in success. He simply never allowed himself to fail. Fortunately for me, he decided that I would be his next project. I will never forget his first evaluation of my work, just 90 days after starting my legal career. Ethan, as an attorney, you are dedicated, diligent, and meticulous. You are creative and very knowledgeable about the law. You do excellent work. I allowed myself a brief smile at the compliment. Thank you, Mr. Harrison. As a human being, you're completely inept. At your age, are you 30 or 90? What the hell is going on with you? Don't bother telling me now. We're going for a walk. That's how I found myself sitting across from Walter Harrison, real estate mastermind, king of Las Vegas, for what became our weekly review of the Ethan Project. By the end of our first session, I realized why he was so good at what he does. He asked me a few questions and then let me do the talking. Every now and then, he would ask clarifying questions, tell some story or anecdote, and then listen to me again. I told him everything. I told him about my life since childhood, about my parents, about law school, and most importantly, about Claire. I told him things I had never told anyone else, and I felt completely safe doing so. He ended our conversation the way only he could. Well, we have a lot to work on. Fortunately, we have a lot to work on. Now let's get back to the office. I'm not paying you to mess around all day. I had no idea of his motives because we had never discussed them. At first, I didn't really understand what he was trying to accomplish. But after 3 years, the results became obvious. He was often so subtle that I didn't even realize what he was doing until it was done. He would plant a seed and I would find a flower. He would comment on a picture, an article, a movie, a TV show, or a book. Something would click in my brain, and I would add to my wardrobe, go to the gym, learn to cook, make better investments, buy my own real estate. Without his help, I would have lived a very nice middle-class life. But with his help, I became a confident, successful young and promising business professional. I made the right choices, met the right people, and got involved in the right deals. I didn't know how to thank him, but he didn't want any credit. Even though his dad showed him how to hold a putter, Tiger is the one who makes shots and wins tournaments. Ethan, the only gratitude I need or will ever need will come from watching you succeed. I worked for Harrison for almost 5 years when he stopped pushing me to succeed in business and started working on my personal life and, more importantly, my soul. He dropped the first bombshell one day, casually stopping by my office and sitting down in one of the guest chairs. "Ethan, what are you getting your parents for their anniversary?" I was puzzled by this question. He had to remember that my mother had died years ago. I was sure he knew that my father had died of liver failure the previous year. He was the one who had approved my taking time off to go to Florida for the funeral. When I looked at him, he took great pleasure in my confusion. "Oh, come on, Ethan. Next month, Frank and Diane Brennan will have been married for 50 years. Surely you must have already thought of a suitable gift. Only a jackass wouldn't mark an event of this magnitude. Damn ungrateful children." With those words, he triumphantly withdrew. He was right. The Brennans were my de facto parents. I sent them messages at least once a month. In my second year of law school, I started calling them on their birthdays. I even occasionally sent them gifts or cards on holidays, including flowers for Mother's Day. After about a year, I stopped hiding my whereabouts and could always count on a nice birthday card and a package from Diane for Christmas. 50 years of marriage is a lifetime achievement and deserves the best. That's exactly what I gave them. First-class airfare, a stay at a 5-star spa and hotel, a limo, a table at the finest restaurants in Las Vegas, and VIP tickets to the hottest shows on the Strip. All expenses paid. I sent it to them overnight with a note. "Congratulations in honor of a shining example of true fidelity. Happy anniversary. The contents will be used at your discretion. Love, Ethan." I had no expectations of my gift and was surprised when I received a phone call at noon the next day. "Ethan Mitchell? Oh, son, what a wonderful surprise. But this is too much. Mrs. Brennan, it's very nice to hear you say that, but you and your husband deserve this gift, and I was honored to give it to you. Oh, Ethan, you've always been a wonderful boy. One moment. Frank wants to talk." "Ethan?" "Yes, sir." "Ethan, this is too much. I can't put you in a difficult position. I can't even imagine the cost. It's too much." He went on and on. I didn't understand how he managed not to catch his breath. "Mr. Brennan." "Frank." "Papa." "Yes, Ethan? My gift does not even repay you for all the kindness you have shown me over the years. It gives me great joy to be able to give it to you. Please accept it in the spirit in which it was intended." After a short pause, he uttered, "See, son, we accept. Wonderful. Happy anniversary." From there, the conversation turned into one that any travel agent would be proud of. I explained, to the best of my ability, everything I thought they would enjoy about the trip. I hung up the phone after many words of gratitude and love, and I felt better. Much better. I think it was the first non-selfish act I'd done in almost a decade. I was just reflecting on that fact when I noticed Harrison and his huge grin darkening my doorway. Damn ungrateful kids. Shut up, old man. The Brennans' vacation didn't go at all the way I expected. I assumed they'd want to use my gift to the fullest. Sightseeing, eating at great restaurants, resting and relaxing at the hotel and spa. They did, but they always dragged me along with them. But the most important thing they wanted to do was spend time with me. From the minute they checked into the resort, judging by the arrival time, the drive time to the hotel, and the few minutes to check in, they hadn't been in the room more than 5 minutes when my phone rang. "Ethan Mitchell. Son, when are you coming to see us?" "Hello, Mrs. Brennan. How was the flight?" Good. Frank said we need to rest for a few minutes, but then we'll be ready to leave. When will you be arriving? Well, I think I can be there in about an hour. Oh, son, great. I'll see you then. To be honest, I hadn't planned on spending time with the Brennans during their trip. They had enough things to keep them busy. I had work piled up on my desk and was contemplating how I'd rearrange my schedule when Harrison walked into my office with 2 paralegals in tow. Ethan, I took the liberty of assigning you some time off. I think you need a break. Now get out of here and don't come back for a week, or you'll be fired. The paralegals boxed up all my work and quickly left, leaving my desk empty. Ethan, spend some time with your parents, and I'll take care of everything else. That's what I did. However, I broke one rule. The Brennans insisted on visiting my office. Harrison didn't usually joke about a man's employment status, but when we entered the office, it seemed like he was expecting us. He personally gave the Brennans a tour of the office, introducing them to everyone as my parents. Coffee and snacks were waiting for us in the conference room, where he spent almost an hour telling the Brennans about my work, praising my accomplishments, and treating them like royalty. I will say that I was very pleased to see the Brennans glow with pride when he talked about me. Diane almost never left my side, patting my hand every time someone said nice words about me. So proud of you, son. The rest of the week went by in the same vein. Harrison's influence was felt almost everywhere we went. I'll be honest, I chose the limo, resort, restaurants, and shows for the Brennan's trip based on business contacts I'd made over the years. I performed a few favors, nothing major really, but Harrison put his best foot forward. Everywhere we went, we were treated like VIPs. We were greeted by owners, not managers. Directors, not assistants. They told the Brennan stories about how I'd helped them with their business and treated us to the best seats in the house, the best wine on reserve, or the best of what they had to offer. It was really something. Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, I have to admit that this week has been a little too eventful. I know and have worked with all of these people, but I have never been given this level of service before. I'm afraid I'm living a much more modest daily life. Ethan, we think it's wonderful that you have so many friends who wanted to show us how special they think you are. We always knew you were a very special young man, and we've always been proud to call you that. Diane Brennan couldn't finish, but Frank stepped in effortlessly. Our son, you are what you are and what you will always be. You have made the oath before God that made you a part of our family. You have fulfilled every point of that vow. You have been a constant in our lives since you were young, and we have had the honor of watching you grow into a fine man. Father couldn't ask for more, Ethan. We love you and are very proud of you. Frank Brennan had aged a dozen years, but his strength hadn't diminished in the slightest. I thought he was going to break a few ribs as he hugged me. A moment later, Diane Brennan joined our tearful embrace, giving me my first real family moment in so long. Filled my spirit with joy. The rest of their trip went by quickly, and I was sad to see them off. I promised to visit them soon, but first, I had some business to attend to. Once again, Harrison knew exactly what I needed. I returned to work encouraged and more productive. When I told him about my idea, he only smiled and gave me his blessing. The project was relatively small in scope and would not generate long-term income, but it was probably the most important project I'd ever taken on. It only took 6 weeks to complete all but one of the necessary title deeds. I already had a buyer with a full financing package in my pocket. I made a few more phone calls, 7 to be exact, to people who weren't expecting my call. Then, armed with new information on how to close the deal with the remaining property owners, I was ready and booked a flight to my hometown. I was to visit it for the first time in almost 10 years. I was at the airport waiting to board my flight when I met Rachel and Sophia for the first time. They were working at a coffee kiosk in one of the terminals. I was uncomfortable eavesdropping on their conversation, but they didn't try to keep it quiet. From what I could piece together, they had been living in an apartment that had become uninhabitable. The building owner had let things deteriorate to the point where the city had condemned it. The girls had 30 days to find a new place, but they were struggling. The building owner was refusing to return their deposit, claiming damage that existed before they moved in. I didn't mean to get involved, but when they served my coffee, I couldn't help myself. Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. I'm a real estate attorney. If you need help finding a new place to live, tell Marcus. He will help you find a good place in your price range. I've written everything on the back of the card. At that moment, the boarding for my flight was announced. This is my flight. I have to go. Don't worry about the cost. I'll take care of it. Just use the number, Marcus. Thank you so much. Okay. Good luck. Why did I offer to help them? It's a simple question. In my time in real estate, I've seen a lot of it. It was Harrison who gave me a fundamental belief about working in this business. Ethan, real estate is not a zero-sum game. There should be no winners and losers. In the best deals, everyone wins. Our clients get sound investments at the right price. Tenants get premium, high-end properties, and everyone makes money. We are not in the business of scamming people. We're matchmakers, not pimps. So a few phone calls, a letter, and maybe 30 minutes of work by one of our paralegals would clean this out and get two girls out of a bad situation. From time to time, we did pro bono work. This was no exception. Before disconnecting from the phone, I sent Marcus a quick email so he wouldn't be surprised when he got a call and also so he'd know how to charge for his time. The flight to Omaha was relatively short, and I quickly got my rental car and luggage. For a few minutes, I drove aimlessly around the city. Not much had changed, at least the major landmarks were still the same. But there was something new. It seemed to be the same but no longer felt like home. I drove through the Brennan neighborhood. Every house but theirs was in disrepair. This neighborhood had never been the best, but it was clearly neglected now. I knew some things had changed, like the new condominium complex that was my final destination. The design was unique to the area, several levels of condos above retail space filled with restaurants, a movie theater, and stores, including a grocery store. Adjoining the building was a large park with several walking paths. Everything was perfect. The apartment I was in was brand new, with 2 bedrooms, a large open living room, dining room and kitchen, and a separate den. It had a large balcony overlooking the park and a beautiful view of the skyline. The master bedroom and bathroom were spa-like, with a jetted tub and large tile shower. The space was beautifully furnished. The fixtures were top of the line, and the appliances were state-of-the-art. A few photos and personal touches, and you'll feel very comfortable. I expected the Brennans to meet me for dinner at one of the restaurants, and they were on time. They were dressed for a night on the town, and we had a great dinner, laughing. We could only hope that the rest of the evening would go just as well. Frank and Diane Brennan were each 67 years old and had been married for 50 years. I know what you're thinking. I did the math too. They were clearly married at a different time. They were both young at heart and healthy, but years of manual labor had taken their toll on Frank. Diane worked as a low-level administrator to save for her retirement. During one of our conversations in Las Vegas, I learned that although they were ready to retire, they didn't think they could afford it. They worried about living out their golden years in a home surrounded by crime and abandoned houses. I hope to change all that. As Harrison reminded me, this is what children do for their parents. I invited them back to the condominium for a late-night gathering. When we stepped into the elevator, they looked surprised. I didn't even know this was a hotel, son. The rooms must be expensive. Yeah, we need to talk about that. When I opened the door to the apartment, they both started gushing about the room. It was nice to see that they liked it. I'd asked their 7 children to describe the Brennans' dream home. Most of their descriptions matched. Some had details that differed from the others. I was sure I had covered them all. Their attention was drawn to the champagne. Are we celebrating? Yes, I hope so. What's the occasion? I popped the cork. Your retirement and new home. I raised my glass and gestured around the room. Oh my goodness. This is a gift? We can't accept it. It's too much. Frank is right, son. We can't accept something like this. Oh, it's not a gift, but you will have more than enough to buy it. Please, sit down and let's talk about it. They faltered a bit, but overall, things were going well. When we sign these documents, we will form a partnership, the Brennan Investment Group. The first thing we'll do is close on 19 properties within a 2-block radius around your house. The second thing we'll do is package those properties together with your current home, request a zoning change from the planning department, and sell them to Property Management International, which plans to use the space to build a hotel, retail, and parking lot next to the new arena. We'll realize this amount of money from the sale of our property in the next 90 days. I held out a piece of paper across the table with the dollar amount highlighted. I think they were shocked. This apartment is rented, as is, for the next 3 months, with a 90-day option to buy for this amount. I held out a second piece of paper with another dollar amount highlighted. Then, half of the remaining profits will go to fund a lifetime annuity for the two of you, with monthly dividends equal to this amount. A third piece of paper was placed on the table. And then you will begin living carefree on a well-deserved retirement in your new home. I'm only giving you some sound business advice and free legal services. The Brennans will not become rich, but they will never have to work a day in their lives. It's more of a silver parachute, and that will be enough. Ethan, how did you manage to do all this in such a short time? Well, buying the property adjacent to yours took a little work, but was easy enough. Mr. Harrison found a buyer through his business connections. It turns out there's a new gambling establishment being built across the river in Iowa. We easily negotiated a price once we determined the value of the property given its new purpose. The zoning change will happen with the help of our buyer's contacts on the city council. And the rest is just a good investment. Diane Brennan cried but smiled. Frank only shook his head. I can't believe it. It's just a miracle. It's more than we could have imagined. No one deserves it more than the two of you. I hadn't seen or heard from Claire in 10 years. Her parents had never mentioned her name. Her siblings, though I interacted with them infrequently, never mentioned her name. I had never thought of her. And yet, when I saw her for the first time, I felt as if someone had shaken me awake from sleep. I had loved her all my formative years and the beginning of my adult life. And now I felt nothing. Our meeting was as random as it could ever be. I didn't pack well, choosing my favorite things over coordinated outfits. I needed to buy a few things to stay dressed throughout the trip. Luckily, the new mall had one of my favorite stores. When I left town, it wasn't here yet. I had been walking around the store for a while when I heard a familiar voice. You have great taste. Claire looked almost exactly as I remembered. A little older, a smile not as bright, and a couple extra pounds. Nothing special. Just a more grown-up version of the woman I'd married. Hi, Claire. Why are you here? I'm shopping. What about you? Oh, I work here. I meant why are you in town? Just finishing up some business and visiting old friends. Oh, I was hoping to get on your list of friends you're going to visit. Honestly? No. Oh, okay. It was nice to see you, Ethan. You too, Claire. I thought that was the end of it. It was very awkward, but not to the point of discomfort. I thought it had gone better than I could have expected, since I wasn't planning on seeing her again. My peace of mind was short-lived when I noticed her working the cash register. She finished ringing me up before she spoke again. Ethan, how long will you be in town? Maybe a few days. Do you think we could get together and talk? At least a little? I'll think about it. She handed me her card. I walked away without another word. I really didn't have anything to say to her. I had really gotten over myself. I hardly made any phone calls. Against my better judgment, 2 nights later, I found myself sitting alone in a booth at one of my favorite bars. Claire and I often met friends here on Friday afternoons after work. The place was cozy enough, but not like it used to be. She was clearly all dressed up. A little black dress skimmed her curves, which had widened noticeably with age. Black shoes with 4-inch heels showed off her legs. She had clearly spent time on makeup, hair, and manicures. If she had been a stranger, I would have even asked if I could buy her a drink. She actually looked good. I didn't stand when she slid into the booth across from me. She waited a few minutes before she started. "You lied to me. You lied to me first." I knew what she was talking about. She knew what I meant. She had the courtesy to make an embarrassed look before she continued. "I didn't think you'd actually leave town. I was hoping we'd have a chance to talk." What would have been the point of that? I don't know. I really don't. But I do know I wasn't happy when you left me. Well, you left me no choice, so I don't feel guilty about your unhappiness. She was slightly surprised at my tone. I wasn't being harsh. I was just being truthful. "Ethan, I never stopped loving you. Even when I did what I did, I had to." I sighed. I wondered if she would choose to go that route. "Claire, the only good thing about our divorce was that you never lied to me. Probably because I never gave you a chance. But I'm not going to sit here much longer if you're going to lie to me now. What do you even want? Why are we sitting here? It's not going to change anything. What happened to us is long over. But you never fought for me. You just gave up on us without even arguing. It was so unexpected. Why did you leave me without even trying? I thought you loved me." "Well, I guess we'll have to agree to disagree. The way it looked to me, you gave up on me without a single word. You abandoned me without giving me a single chance to fix what you thought was broken. I just put it on paper. That was a mistake, Ethan. I made a huge mistake, and I'm sorry, okay?" I had to groan. The years spent apart had given me clarity. Apparently, those same years had put Claire in a state of delusion. A pained expression appeared on her face, and her eyes began to water. But everything she said was a lie. Just because things didn't work out the way you hoped and you're feeling remorseful doesn't mean you can rewrite history. Please don't insult my intelligence by pretending you care about me. I cared, Ethan. I loved you. I still love you. You honestly believe that, do you? It's true, Ethan. Okay, let's consider this theory. Was it you or Derek Patterson who decided that I should be deprived of intimacy with my loving wife? She looked me straight in the eye, and for a second, there was a flicker of shame in her eyes. But mostly, it looked like she didn't want to answer and probably regretted starting this. It was him. So your endless love for me not only allowed you to be with another man but to submit to his wishes, even though it would clearly hurt me? Ethan, How long did you wait before you stopped taking birth control pills? What? Well, I mean, you didn't accidentally get pregnant. You decided to let him get you pregnant. That's what you wanted to do. When were you going to tell me you were carrying a baby? You promised me. In your vows. Or were you going to tell me you were carrying my child? Knowing we had nothing. She didn't even bother to open her mouth to try to answer. Why aren't you with him? Where is he? Anyway, he didn't want me. His wife found out about the baby, and so did his boss at the office. His wife divorced him, and he had to resign from his position or he'd be fired. He left me. I had to quit my job too. It was too embarrassing to be there when everyone knew what happened. And I'm supposed to feel bad about that? Why? I don't know, Ethan. I really don't. I made a mistake. I got involved in a bad thing and I couldn't stop. I know I was wrong. Can't you forgive me? I love you. I died the day you left me, and I've missed you ever since. I wanted you to come back and give me another chance. I wanted you to give me a chance to apologize and tell you I'd never do it again. I'm all alone, Ethan. My parents talk to me. My siblings don't want me around. I don't have any friends. I'm all alone. Claire, I forgave you a long time ago, but I don't have a chance to go back to what we had. As for the rest, you have your child. He can keep you warm at night. That's cruel, Ethan. It's no more cruel than the lies you tell me. I'm not lying, Ethan. I want another chance. It's what I've dreamed of all these years. It's never going to happen. Why, Ethan? I know you love me. You said so yourself. You said you would always love me. I've always loved you. Why doesn't that work? For two reasons. One, I'm no longer the same person who married you. I've changed a lot. You don't know me anymore, and I certainly don't know you, if I ever did. You do know me, Ethan. I'm still the same as I was then, the woman you loved. So your first reason doesn't matter. What's the second? You know, Claire, that's the first thing you said, and I truly believe it. But let me tell you about the second reason, and then I'll ask you a question. You wanted someone else. I let you have what you wanted without saying a single harsh word because I loved you. Maybe I love you differently now. Since the day I left you, I've gone to law school, passed the bar exam, started a new career, and built a new life. But the one thing I haven't done is have another lover. I haven't been with a woman since the last time we were together. Let me ask you something. How many different men have you tried in the time you've been pining for me and our lost love? Claire couldn't even lift her eyes to meet mine. You see, I knew you were telling me the truth, Claire. You see, I didn't know it then, but the woman I loved was... I paused. How could I ever trust you again? Why would I even want to? Give me one reason why I would want to let you back into my life that wouldn't benefit only you. If you can do that, maybe we have a chance. She cried quietly as I got up to leave. That's what I thought. Goodbye, Claire. 3 months later, I saw them again. I was on my way back to Omaha to finish some business. Everything was going according to plan. Frank and Diane were enjoying their new home and freedom. It warmed my heart to see and speak to them when they were so happy. The ladies didn't complain this time, just giggled and smiled as they served the customers. I was already immersed in my phone when I heard them shout my name. Mr. Mitchell. Yes? Can I help you? For a second, I didn't recognize them. I'd never met them. I didn't even know their names. I was at a complete loss when it came to me. Oh, right. The coffee shop. I'm sorry I couldn't follow up. How did it go? Fine, Mr. Mitchell. We would have contacted you, but we don't even know how to thank you. You're welcome, Ethan, and no thanks are necessary. I was just trying to grab some good karma. I'm just happy it worked out for you. I paused for a moment to appreciate the two young ladies. Only one was speaking. She was a very pretty brunette with a nice smile and curly hair falling to her shoulders. She was about 5'7" and had a very curvy but healthy figure. Her companion looked shy. She was a little taller and much slimmer. She had long, straight blonde hair. She didn't look unhealthy by any means. It was just that her figure was small, and everything about her matched that. I would have thought she was afraid of me if she didn't have a small smile on her face. The boarding for my plane was announced again. Well, ladies, this is my plane. Again, it was nice to see you. Sorry, I don't know your names. I'm Rachel, and this is Sophia. We're cousins. Well, Rachel and Sophia, it was nice to see you again. I stood in line and was about to give my ticket to the agent when Rachel ran up to me. She handed me a napkin from their coffee shop with a phone number on it. We really need to thank you properly. Will you call me when you get back? Since I was next in line to board, I just opened my mouth. Knowing myself, I probably would have gracefully declined if I had been given time to think. Sure, no problem. On the big holidays, there was always a family gathering. Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, 4th of July, and St. Patrick's Day were all occasions to gather and celebrate. Asking everyone to get together in September was a little weird, but that's exactly what I did. I was surprised that everyone fit in the Brennans' new apartment. There was clearly not enough room to sleep, but as a gathering place, it was quite comfortable. Everyone spread out and stared at me. This was going to be one of the hardest things I'd ever done. Maybe they wouldn't consider it my place. I had no idea, but it felt like the right thing to do. And as Harrison always said, I was going with my gut. I wanted everyone here, so I only had to say it once, and I wanted you all to hear it at the same time. First, I want to say that being treated as a full member of this family has been one of my greatest joys. Frank and Diane, Your love and support gave me the strength to deal with some very difficult circumstances. I will always be grateful to you for that. But I also remember how Claire was a part of this family. She was also able to share the joy of successes and the pain of failures with this family. She cheated on me, and because of that, I had to make some hard choices. But she didn't cheat on any of you. Just a few months ago, I talked to her for the first and only time in 10 years. It was one of the most painful conversations of my life. I had some harsh words for her and her attitude towards me. But while I was always angry at her for her behavior, it was what she told me about all of you that made me feel ashamed. So I say this with all due respect to each and every one of you. Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, please forgive my language and my hasty departure. But this is what I have to say and do. You all need to stop being a bunch of stubborn fools and stop ostracizing your daughter and sister and her daughter. And until she gets back to this family, where she was always supposed to be, I want nothing to do with you. Mr. and Mrs. Brennan, I will not contact you, and you should not contact me until this situation is over. The shocked expressions on their faces didn't give me much pleasure, but with those words, I walked away from my foster family with no hope of seeing them again. Life over the next year was quite hectic on both a professional and personal level. In the office, we worked at a pace that could have killed us if we'd continued too long. After almost 8 weeks of 14-hour workdays and back-to-back deals, Harrison was fed up. One evening in the conference room, he let us all know. That's it. I'm done. I can barely stand the sight of each and every one of you. We're closing from now on. Everyone get out of here and don't come back for a week. I'll pay you for your time if I don't have to look at you. He then walked out of the building. I spent the first day of mandatory exile cleaning my apartment. I had forgotten that I had furniture that was buried under piles of papers, clothes, and takeout containers. I separated the laundry into dry cleaning and washing, emptying my pockets as I went. That's when I found the napkin with the number on it. On the morning of my 3rd day of exile, with a clean apartment and an updated closet, the napkin adorned my dining room table like a centerpiece. I decided to make a phone call. I sounded like an idiot. Hello? Yes. Can I, speak to Rachel, please? This is her. Oh, hi Rachel. This is Ethan, Mitchell. I was the one at the airport, so you gave me your number at the airport. Oh shoot, I mean, you might remember me from the airport. You gave me your number a few weeks ago and asked me to call you. I was sure the red blush on my face was clear as a bell on the other end of the phone line. Hi, Ethan. Of course I remember you. How could I forget? Well, I'm sure this is too short notice, and you both probably have plans, but I was hoping you and Sophia could join me for dinner. Well, I guess I was hoping I could cook you both dinner at my apartment and you could tell me how things went with your apartment. Well, tonight, I guess. We got kicked out of the office for a week, and I got bored. And while I'm sure there should have been periods in some of the sentences, I was hoping you could have dinner tonight with me in my apartment. She giggled. I groaned. Ethan, we'd love to have dinner at your apartment, and this evening works for us. Fantastic. Great. That's good. Ethan? Yes. Can you give me your address? Oh yeah, sure. My humiliation was total. I couldn't even take a couple people out to dinner. I was much happier talking to Rachel and Sophia face to face. Even though Sophia was still quiet, she made eye contact and smiled, and that was more than enough for me. It's a great apartment, Ethan. You must love throwing parties here. My apartment was pretty impressive, not that I had much to do with it. It was the centerpiece of an unfinished lot. Harrison and I were involved in restructuring the developer financing. It just so happened that a 3-bedroom penthouse was on the market at below market value, and I jumped at the opportunity. I had a fantastic view of the strip and a prime bachelor pad that was hardly ever used for its intended purpose. I liked the place so much that I decided to spend a little more, but I didn't want to mention that I also owned the building. Actually, unless you count my boss, you're the first visitors I've had here. Really? What about your girlfriend? Oh, I don't have a girlfriend. I haven't even been on a date since I got divorced, which was 10 years ago. Rachel and Sophia sat on bar stools at the kitchen island and drank wine. Rachel asked me question after question. It was really nice to talk to someone other than my boss and coworkers. I cooked pasta, worked on the sauce, and chatted nonstop. I didn't even notice that I was answering all of her questions. I guess I was just comfortable with them. I couldn't explain it. But then the conversation stopped. When I turned around, they were both staring at me with their mouths open. What? Did I say something that upset you? I'm sorry. What did I say? You haven't been on a date in 10 years, Ethan? Well, no, I haven't. I've been studying and working, and it just hasn't occurred to me. Is that weird? Yes. Even Sophia nodded her head. Well, I guess I never really thought about it. I guess it's kind of weird. Jesus, Ethan, I just can't believe it. Well, it's true. Dinner's ready. It's time for us to move to the table. Dinner was a lot of fun. There was a lot of laughter and smiles. I learned all about Rachel and Sophia. Rachel was in her final year of university studying hospitality management. Sophia was studying English with a major in creative writing. I asked Sophia if I could read some of her work. Rachel replied that she probably would. They exchanged glances that I couldn't read. They were both 22 years old and had been living together since they were 18, when Sophia's parents were killed in a car accident. Continuing to live together through college seemed ideal. Rachel said that Sophia liked me and that she would eventually talk to me once she got to know me better. I left it at that. However, all night long, the room felt strangely electric. Perhaps it was the wine or my complete lack of social skills, but I felt like they were both flirting with me. A couple times, I secretly chided myself for even thinking that way about the two young women who were my guests. But not too hard. Frankly, I enjoyed the attention, even if it was just a fantasy made up in my head. At the end of the evening, I received a brief hug and a kiss on the cheek from both girls. They left, and Rachel said we should meet again soon. I jokingly told them I was free for the rest of the week and to come over whenever they wanted. I was genuinely surprised when they showed up the next day before lunch with a picnic basket full of food. We ate lunch on the balcony and enjoyed the day until the temperature became unbearable to be outside. Then they both left for work. They seemed to really take my invitation to heart. The next evening, after class was over, they returned with pizza, popcorn, and a movie. They shared the couch and I settled into my favorite club chair. The next day, Rachel was a little nervous about asking permission to use the pool. She wondered if the building management had a policy for guests to use the pool. I smiled and said I would take care of it. When they arrived the next day, I had a surprise for them. I had keys to the pool and gym for both of them, as well as a locker in the women's locker room. Sometimes it's good to be the king. They had a surprise for me too. When they came out of the bedroom in their bikinis, I realized I was going to have to increase the intensity of my daily workouts. For a few moments, I was sure I was going to have a heart attack when they left for the pool. After my week of exile was over, we kind of got into a routine. I would leave for work and come home. 3 or 4 days a week, the girls would stop by my house for dinner, a movie, or just a chat. On Saturday or Sunday, we usually found some activity for the three of us to do. The girls also stopped by the gym almost daily, even though I was usually at work. Harrison was over the moon when he had some new material to tease me with. If I didn't know your sorry ass so well, I'd think you were dating 2 women at the same time. Give me a break, man. We're just friends. And for goodness sake, keep your lewd fantasies to yourself. About 4 months into our friendship, I realized something was wrong. One Friday night, we were having a quiet dinner at my house, but the girls were unusually reserved. As dinner drew to a close, I just couldn't stand the tension building. Girls, is something wrong? No, not really, Ethan. Sophia just wanted to ask you a question, but I don't know how to phrase it. Rachel, you know you can ask me anything. I have no filter when it comes to the two of you. Just ask. As long as you promise not to be offended by my answer. Well, okay. Why haven't you ever made a single step in our direction? Don't you find us attractive? I was a little stunned by the question. Took me a moment to pull myself together. Well, that's a difficult question. Let me just say that you are both stunningly beautiful young women. But I've never made a move on you for 2 reasons. 1, I don't want to ruin our friendship by offending you or making you think I'm some dirty old man hanging around a couple of hot college girls for diversion. And secondly, I don't even know if I have a move. I've never had the opportunity to use it. I don't even know where to start. Rachel and Sophia stared at each other for a moment. Then Sophia smiled and nodded. Rachel took a deep breath and sighed slowly. Ethan, Sophia, and I want you to know that we really enjoy spending time with you. And we both really like you a lot. I like spending time together too. But Sophia and I are also looking for someone special. And we want to make sure you know exactly what that means. Ladies, I meant what I said. You are both extremely attractive, and I can say with complete confidence that neither of you will have a problem finding someone special. I think each of you will find such a person without a problem. For a brief moment, I thought Sophia was about to speak. She was almost begging Rachel to continue. I think you misunderstood, Ethan. We don't want each of us to have our own special person. We want one special person. Just one. And we think that person might be, no, I guess it's better to say we think that person is you. To say I was shocked is an understatement. I didn't even have time to finish before she continued. But we want you to understand exactly what we're asking before we take the next step. So Sophia wants me to ask you to devote an evening to reading some of her works. She feels, and I agree, that this will give you some insight into what she is looking for. Then we'd like to come back tomorrow and talk about what that means for us and to you. Well, and for all of us. Can you do that? I think I can, though I admit I'm a little confused. You just want me to read her stories? Yes, Ethan. And tomorrow we'd like to talk about them and us. Okay, I can do that. Now, I realize that some of you may have the wrong impression of me. I have strong opinions about what I think is right and wrong. This is true. These beliefs have always guided my actions. I also hold opinions about how you should treat people you care about, especially friends and family. In addition, I try to show kindness to strangers and people I don't know very well, but have to interact with on a daily basis. However, I am not so narcissistic that I think all people share my opinion. So I have a live and let live philosophy. As long as someone is not hurting others, I had no opinion on how they lived. Want to have 19 kids, a wife, and 4 dogs? That's fine with me. Just treat them well. However, I can also be a real hard ass. Those who crossed paths with me in business deals really regretted it. Harrison called it my Jekyll and Hyde quality. He said I was always giving people a head start, treating them with a little too much respect. But when someone crossed my path, he thought I'd sometimes cut their heart out with a spoon just to watch them die. He thought it was funny. I thought it was a big exaggeration. But I did have a temper. I don't think I was like that before Claire broke my heart. Until that moment, I had never experienced someone betraying my trust in such a dramatic way. That incident made me very loyal to those who earned my trust and extremely vindictive to those who abused it. For a long time after the divorce, I had almost no interest in intimacy. I was too consumed with the pain of the divorce to even think about it. Anything that reminded me even slightly of Claire made it hard to breathe. I coped by ignoring those things and concentrating on my studies or work. It took a long time for that pain to dissipate. I always thought that meeting the love of my life at such a young age was great, but it turns out that I missed out on a big chunk of life experience that could have been useful in my situation. I had never asked a girl out on a date. I had never had a one-night stand. I had no idea how to attract the interest of a girl, let alone a woman. Unfortunately, because of this, I was too afraid of rejection to even try. I was confident in many things, but thanks to Claire, being with a woman was beyond me. Before I knew it, 10 years had passed, and I was beginning to think that I would never get the chance to try anything new. It was with that mindset that I read Sophia's stories. They were stunningly vivid, written in historical tapestries that really showcased her creativity. She wrote like poetry and outlined her characters so clearly that I felt like I had known some of them all my life. I learned a lot about Sophia from her stories. The girls arrived around noon the next day. I was afraid I was about to ruin a couple of wonderful new friendships. After grabbing drinks and appetizers, we made our way to the living room. Rachel got right down to business. Sophia and I aren't involved with each other sexually. Okay, that's probably important to know, but I honestly hadn't thought about it. Sophia only smiled as Rachel continued. Sophia and I always looked out for each other. We weren't just cousins. We were best friends for as long as I can remember. When we started getting interested in boys, we always talked about what we liked, what we did with our boys, and more importantly, what we wanted to do with our boys. I was always drawn to sweet, caring boys. Sophia, on the other hand, was always drawn to the more aggressive alpha males. The guys she dated were great in certain ways, but they weren't always kind on dates. I guess even though I understood what she needed and even understood the appeal of what she was attracted to, I just didn't want her to get hurt. They sat next to each other, holding hands. Then our worst fears came true. One of Sophia's boyfriends became overly aggressive. A few weeks later, Sophia found out she was pregnant. It didn't go well and she got into trouble. To make a long story short, they had to terminate the pregnancy for the sake of her health. But complications arose because of that. Sophia can't have children. Unshed tears stood in the eyes of both of them. We had dreamed of our children playing together since we were young. We were only 19, and that dream ended before it could begin. But I loved Sophia more than a cousin and more than a friend. I knew she would always have a place in my life. So we talked, and together we decided that our dream didn't have to end. I would love Sophia's children as if they were my own, and I knew she would love mine as if they came from her womb. So we agreed that we would share my children and raise them together as co-mothers. They both looked at me, I guess to gauge my reaction. I didn't know what to respond. I felt like Rachel was describing one of the most selfless acts of kindness I had ever heard. I had always known there was an unspoken intimacy between them, and now that I knew the story, it all made sense. I think it's one of the saddest, kindest, and most beautiful stories I've ever heard. They both smiled softly. But then we had another problem. Before we could approach anyone with our idea, we had to find a suitable candidate. And after a while, we were sure we'd have to turn them down. The guys I was attracted to were too weak for Sophia. The guys who attracted Sophia's attention were always too arrogant for me. So we were looking for the impossible. A handsome, kind and gentle, loving, mega-confident alpha male. And then we met you, Sophia whispered. It was the first time Sophia had ever spoken to me. It made my heart race. Rachel continued. Without even knowing us, you solved our problem without even asking for a thank you. It was one of the nicest things anyone has ever done for us. And at the same time, you just took charge. You identified our problem, gave us a solution, told us what to do, and then left without saying a word. It was so perfect that we didn't even know how to approach you so as not to ruin the relationship. And then we met up again and started hanging out with you. We got to know the real you, not just what we had fantasized to ourselves. And it was wonderful. And then we decided to take a chance and let you into our world without any secrets. That way, if you thought we were crazy, we'd have a chance to stay friends when you turned us down. Now I really didn't know what to say. I was sure I had just been offered a life with two beautiful women. There was no way that was going to leave me satisfied. Okay, this is too much for me. I need some time to think about it. Can we take a break? I promise we'll talk more over the weekend. Of course, Ethan. We understand, Rachel replied. They left quickly. I felt a little disappointed. I already knew what my answer would be, but I wanted to give them an answer that matched their offer. They had given it a lot of thought and were clearly sharing something very personal with me. I wanted my answer to match that. I quickly ran a few errands to get ready for the evening and got back to the apartment around 3. I pulled out my cell phone and home phone and sat down at the kitchen table. I prepared a text message for Sophia and then called Rachel. Hello. Hi, Rachel, it's Ethan. I hit the send message button. Hi, Ethan. Rachel, I was wondering if you wanted to go out with me tonight. Maybe have dinner and a drink or two. Sophia's cell phone rang in the background. A few seconds later, I heard her sigh in surprise. Ethan, I'd love to have dinner with you tonight. Great. I'll pick you up at 7 if that's okay. Sounds great. Great. I'll see you soon. I hung up and waited for Sophia's response. Her invitation was much riskier, but I hoped my hunch would hit the mark. My message read, "Be at my place at 6. Don't be late. You will be staying the night." She replied honestly, "Perfect." I brought flowers to the door of Rachel's apartment. When she opened the door, I was speechless. I know every girl has a little black dress, maybe even a few. Claire always wore one on special occasions. I can tell you that I've never seen a dress as perfect as the one Rachel was wearing. I handed her the flowers, a small bouquet of white lilies. Wow, you look amazing. Thank you, Ethan, for the flowers and the compliment. My evening with Rachel could be described as romantic. We shared a bottle of wine and sushi at one of her favorite restaurants. Then we drove to one of my favorite nightclubs for drinks. The tall, round booths provided the perfect privacy for conversation, and so we talked. We talked about our dreams and future plans. We talked about what we thought about kids and family. We talked about partners and commitments. We bonded. I could feel it. By the end of the evening, her eyes were glowing. In the early evening, we strolled through a local park, holding hands. For a few minutes, we just walked and enjoyed each other. As we stood at the door of her apartment, I couldn't help but show the worry on my face. What's bothering you, Ethan? Why me, Rachel? I'm over 10 years older than you. I'm divorced. All the male eyes and most of the female ones we walked past this evening were practically fixed on you. You can get anyone you want, Rachel. At some point very soon, I'm sure you'll figure it out. But tonight, can you live with me just telling you that you're the one I know? That there is no other? Yes, I can live with that. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Rachel. No, Ethan. Thank you. I wasn't a big believer in organized religion, but I always appreciated the pageantry and community of large holiday church services. I had to convert to Catholicism to get married at Claire's church, and I had been a faithful parishioner during our marriage. So it felt strange to be sitting in my former church on Easter Sunday. I was a little confused about the start time of Mass and had already been sitting alone in the back of the church for about 15 minutes when she sat down next to me. This seems an appropriate place for confession. Forgive me, Ethan, for I have sinned. Claire, I forgave you a long time ago. You know that. Oh, I suppose I know that, Ethan. But you forgave me when I did not deserve it and at a time when I was unrepentant for what I had done. But now, Ethan, I finally realize the pain I've caused you. If I could, I would give anything not to betray you. Honestly, I always thought you deserved someone better than me. I'm so sorry I couldn't be the woman you deserved. And I want to thank you for giving me my family back. My dad told me that you're the reason they came to me. You always were and still are such a good man, Ethan. Thank you. Claire, I appreciate your apology, and you're always welcome. Mass went well. The Easter brunch was hearty. But as the day wore on, I realized that when Claire and her daughter returned to their seats, there was no room for me in the Brennan family. It was time to move on. There were a few tearful goodbyes when it was time for me to leave. I think we all knew what my goodbyes really meant. In a moment that made my journey come full circle, Diane Brennan hugged me at the door, letting me know that she understood more than she was saying. When she finally let me go, she put her hand on my cheek, closed her eyes, and stood silent for a moment. When she opened them again, she spoke in a voice that only I could hear. God bless you, son. I will miss you. My personal life wasn't normal for months. Rachel, Sophia, and I had been following a strange pattern. We spent a huge amount of time together as a platonic trinity. If Rachel and Sophia lived with me full-time, the difference in our weekly time together would probably not exceed a couple hours. I was insanely happy dating Rachel. There was nothing more than kissing between us. She was just saying that we would both understand when the time was right. I couldn't disagree with her. I just didn't feel like we were ready to take the next step. But the most unusual part was that she didn't mind at all building anticipation and then sending me back to Sophia for companionship. Of course, I didn't particularly resist. Sophia, for her part, brightened. Rachel told me that from our very first connection, Sophia had told her that I was perfect. Apparently, I could read between the lines. Sophia needed guidance. It made her feel safe and cared for. Rachel had managed their day-to-day affairs over the years, and I had gradually taken over that role. Obviously, it was the flowers that were the deciding factor. I hadn't really thought about giving my girls flowers. It just seemed like an appropriate gesture at the time. I gave Rachel flowers at the beginning of our first date and other random moments because it was romantic. Sophia's flowers were more of a thank you and had to be delivered at a different time due to certain circumstances. My first real date with Rachel was great, but as I walked back to my apartment and to awaiting Sophia, I began to worry that I wouldn't be able to give her what she needed. I shouldn't have worried. I spent hours over the next few months thinking about the best way to connect with Sophia. But that first night, instinct made all the difference. When Sophia walked into the room with the biggest smile I'd ever seen on her face, holding her flowers, I was finally able to take my first full breath of the day. Mission accomplished. Leaving Omaha for the last time, I enjoyed myself immensely. I told myself over and over again that I had survived Claire's betrayal of our marriage. I told myself that I had a new life. I had a fresh start in a new career. I had money, and I convinced myself that it was enough. But that's what was missing, real completion and a real sense of peace. I knew what I needed now. Happiness. On the way home, I made one stop, went into one store and made 2 purchases. It didn't take much time. Having money has its advantages. My girls were happy to see me, and as has become customary, we all sat down to dinner. Our conversation was light and fun. We were doing well. We had a pretty good life. I hoped to make it even better. Rachel and Sophia cleared the table and went into the kitchen to clean up and load the dishwasher. I stood behind them for a long time, just watching them work together cheerfully, enjoying the tedious task because they were together. I know why we still haven't been intimate. Sophia turned to look at me, but Rachel didn't budge, preferring to stay with her eyes glued to the sink. When you and I make love for the first time, it will be because the most important purpose a couple can have is to create life, to give a piece of each of us for one beautiful and common purpose. That is why we will be together. But you will have an even more important purpose. You will be sharing your beautiful gift to give Sophia and me what we cannot get on our own. Only you can give Sophia and me what we lack. You will give us the most important thing a person can give, a child. Sophia smiled, but tears were running down her cheeks. I think you've been waiting patiently for me to have an epiphany, and I think you've waited long enough. I knelt down and pulled a box out of my pocket. When I opened it, Sophia started jumping up and down, clapping her hands softly. Rachel slowly turned to face me with unshed tears in her eyes. Rachel, will you marry me? Yes, Ethan. I will marry you and love you forever, giving everything I have. In complete agreement, Rachel and Sophia hugged first. It was a perfect example of how close they were and how we all needed each other, each with our own unique set of gifts that, put together, perfectly complemented our lives. I slipped the ring onto Rachel's finger, and Sophia said approvingly, "That is such a beautiful ring, Ethan. Oh, I won't leave you out of it, darling. You're going to be a constant and prominent part of our lives, and I don't want you to think for one second that I've forgotten about it." I pulled a second box out of my pocket and opened it so my girls could see the ankle bracelet with a diamond in the center of a Celtic knot. The 3 corners of the knot were set with birthdate stones, ruby, sapphire, and amethyst. Sophia, we love you and need you. Please don't ever leave us. Rachel was actually crying, but Sophia was surprisingly calm as I slipped the bracelet around her ankle. I'm home, Ethan. I'm not going anywhere. We were married 3 months later in a small ceremony. Sophia stood next to Rachel. Harrison stood next to me. 6 months later, Connor James Mitchell joined us. Twins Emma Grace and Lucas Ryan were born a year and a half later. Baby Isabella Kate joined our family 11 months after that. Our boys looked like me. Emma was a tiny version of Rachel, and Isabella was a clone of Sophia, with a symmetry that could only be divine. Their bond was instant and permanent. Were Rachel and I jealous of the fact that Isabella treated Sophia like an only parent and Rachel and I like an aunt and uncle she loved dearly? No, not for a second. Rachel and I lived as husband and wife, but Sophia was never far away. I began my journey as a contented married man, but I lost all that. My journey to happiness took a long time, but I found my place again. Our life together was as perfect as any relationship can be. I loved Rachel, Sophia, and our children. Rachel loved me, Sophia, and our children. Sophia loved Rachel, needed me, and treated our children with the love that only a mother can give. No one has ever told anyone about our lifestyle. Only our very close friends know the truth. And we live a very happy life together. Thank you for your viewing. See you next time. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.